Hey guys, welcome to You the Boss podcast, episode 16. I'm your host, Pam. Happy February. This month I want to take the approach of keeping kind of like a theme. So that theme is going to definitely be love, self-love, and kind of moving towards, the love for those around you as well. Today's topic is watch what you say, specifically to yourself. And to preface this, as always, supermarket approach, right? You don't go to the store and buy everything. You take what you need and you go. So definitely want to approach that very much today. What I mean by the topic of watch what you say is kind of simple, but I am going to break it down. And that's watch what you say to yourself. Your brain is like a computer, so it doesn't listen to your intention. In science, they say like the brain is the computer of the body, and whatever you put into this computer is what's going to come out of your mind. Clearly this is not talking about different chemical imbalances and anxieties and things like that. That's definitely not my field, but definitely just the basic inputs of what we put into our computer. So starting from the very beginning, you're born and you start teething. No, I'm just kidding. So everything that we know right in this moment, everything that you were not born with. We are born with no fears, no habits. We don't know how to do anything. We don't know how to love anything. The only thing we kind of are born with is the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. And that's because when we're born, we're kind of falling out of one world to another. So with these parts of our brain, we don't learn anything. So what makes a person extra smart or what might make someone more or less positive, this is all learned. This is all something that you take upon yourself. And so in watching what you say, you're watching what you input into your computer. You are not putting junk in, right? Like you don't sit there and when you type into a computer, you don't tell it like, be stupid, don't work, don't do what I need you to do, right? So why do we do that with our brains? Why do we say to ourselves, oh, I can't do that, or I can't do that, or I can't go there, I can't do it. Outside of like physical limitations, you could run a marathon. Maybe not right in this second because physically, you might not be in a running state or you could really hurt yourself. But you could run a marathon. I could run a marathon. Actually, I could walk a marathon, right now. It would probably hurt. It would probably take me 24 hours. But I could definitely walk a marathon. A marathon is only 26 miles. That I'm not making it any less legit if you have run a marathon or even a half marathon, because I think that's amazing. But what I'm saying is you can literally do whatever you tell yourself that you can do. I always like to give you guys some type of a reference, so definitely check the show notes today. But there's a book that I've added to my yearly regime of different books that I read every year. And it's called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. This is not sponsored. I don't get anything from this. This is just me sharing with you guys. So I have to be very clear about that. But that book was recommended to me probably 11 years ago now by one of my mentors. And honestly, that book has completely changed my life. Every time I read it every year, it's put into perspective a lot of different things that throughout the year, maybe I fall back into some habits or I've created different habits that might be affecting me positive or negative. And it's just a good way to recap on this book. And in this book, every time I read it, I've read it at this point like 6 years in a row. I haven't read it yet this year, so it's coming next. But I remember specifically a statistic in this book, and it says that by the time we're 18, we have been told no or been told what we can't do 148,000 times, average. That's like if you come from an average house where your parents are kind of positive, kind of negative, and you live a very average lifestyle. It's 148,000 times. Do you know how many negative inputs that is? And I think the statistic of being told like what you can do or being told like I love you is like a quarter of that. So it's definitely mind-blowing what we put into our brains and kind of how like we're not watching what we say. You know, self-care, I say this a lot, and I know that it is kind of like the trend thing. Self-care is not just skincare. It's not just resting. You know, self-care is also taking care of your mind. What are you putting into your mind? What are you saying to yourself? What are you saying out loud constantly to others about yourself that yourself hears? So if you've ever had a dream and you felt like you were watching yourself in that dream, so like it wasn't you in the dream, but you were watching it kind of like a movie, that is kind of how our brain actually functions. So if you say to yourself, I can do this, whatever it is, I can do this, your brain hears, yeah, we can do this. I can definitely do this. And that works the same way if you say, I can't do this. You're absolutely right. Either way, you're absolutely right. The brain doesn't hear, you know, why you had a bad day. The brain just hears, today's going to be a bad day. Today's going to be a bad day. Today's going to be a bad day. That's what the brain hears. It doesn't hear the reason behind it. It doesn't hear someone passed away. You know, obviously you can't change the outer factors of different things that happen. You know, you can't change some circumstances, like those things are out of our control, but you can control what you're saying to yourself. You can control what comes out of your mouth all the time. The way that this book explains it, your subconscious is like a whole separate part of your brain. And basically, like, because it doesn't hear intention, you know, one of like the phrases that I really don't like is like, yeah, but you know what I mean. And it's like, in most times, you usually do know what a person means, but sometimes it's like, no, actually, I don't. I don't know what you mean. That's actually totally incorrect. I have no idea what you're saying. That is the difference between our conscious mind, because your brain's like, oh, you know what I mean. But your subconscious is like, if you say, oh man, this day has gone to like now this is going to go into a whole other thing, you're telling your subconscious, all right, yeah, this day is going to go bad. This is going to be bad. And we're not watching what we're saying. You know, we as a collective society, the word intention has become, you know, trendy. And I always like to talk about trendy things because, you know, let's really break down what that means. When you're being intentional, you should also be intentional about what you're putting in your mind, what you're putting in your brain, what you're saying to yourself. You know, we spend like 76% of the day in just our own heads. And if 76% of that day is negative, what do you think is going to happen? You think it's going to be positive? And, you know, I don't know that it needs to be said per se, but obviously everything is not always going to be 100% good. That's not realistic. But I can give you the example of if you found a job and the catch of it was that you needed to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You needed to get up every day at 6 o'clock in the morning. I already know that you're listening to this and you're like, absolutely not. I'm not a morning person. I hate mornings. I can't do that. I don't want to leave my house at 6 a.m. XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. But this is like your dream of dream jobs. This is it. This is the top tier. Whatever that is in your field, you just got to wake up at 6 a.m. Could you do it? you're probably thinking, oh, well, like if the circumstances are right. No, you can tell your subconscious, like, I'm not even saying fall in love with 6 a.m. I'm saying I can get up at 6 a.m. You'll know that you won't like it. You'll know that you'll potentially be tired. You'll be cold. Who wants to leave their house at that ungodly hour? But nonetheless, you will wake up at 6 a.m. You'll wake up at 6 a.m. and it'll be like second nature for you in 2 seconds. This goes the same way. That entire example I just gave you goes the same way when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to making money, when it comes to how you speak to the people in your life. You know, if you consistently complain about your partner or you consistently complain about your job, a couple things are going to happen. Number one, both situations are going to get worse. And number two, like, there's probably a chance that something needs to change, but there's also a high probability that you need to change your mind about that. That you need to talk to yourself about that and say, this is temporary. This job situation is temporary. Like, I'm looking for another job. I'm enjoying what I can enjoy here, XYZ. And I know that this sounds kind of like a little like superficial, where I'm speaking of it like if it's just so easy to turn around and change your mind about something. It's not. That's why you have to be intentional. That's why you have to really pay attention what it is that you're saying to yourself. You know, I feel that a lot of the, let's say, clothing industry or even makeup, you know, even skincare, you know, if we're not careful, we can really make ourselves think that, oh, I have to wash my face because if not, I'm going to get wrinkles and I'm going to be ugly. You know, personally, I love doing my skincare. And one of my sister friends, she just feels great when she does her skincare. And like, I love this for her. I love how happy this makes her. But if we're not careful in our intentions, then this can go from being something I love to almost something that's stressing you out. Or simply just from what you're putting in your mind. Simply from something that you're creating to yourself. You know, this is like very closely what affirmations talk about. You know, another thing that's trendy is like affirmations and like, oh, I affirm. And it's like, I'm not a specialist in any of these fields or anything like that. But this is what they're talking about. This is why they work. Because when you say, I am, and you plug in whatever that is, your subconscious believes it. Like, that is like as simple as I can explain it. You know, so you should be watching what you say. You should be watching what you say about your partner when they aren't there. Because if you disrespect someone when they're not with you, you will disrespect them when they are. If you are down talking people in your family, and I'm not talking about toxic situations, like I'm talking about you just have something to say about everybody. If you are comfortable with speaking that way about other people, whether they're there or not, you are more than likely speaking down to yourself in front of others. And you have a lower intention of what it is that you're putting into your mind. I want to extend to you this week for kind of like a little challenge. You know, what are you saying to yourself this week? What is something that maybe you have currently struggled with? And I want you to write these things down. I'm going to give you guys 3 pointers, as I usually like to do. You want to, 1, say this positive thing in the present tense. Number 2, talk about it like it already is. Number 3, say it out loud. You know, we have smartphones. We have the capability of recording on our phones. So take that opportunity to record on your phone your affirmation. So maybe you don't want to say it every day. Maybe you want to say it once and put it in your AirPod when you're getting ready so that your significant other, or if you live with your parents, or if you don't want your coworkers to hear your affirmations, you want to just play them for yourself, use your phone for that. You know, say positive things to yourself. Like if you are working on changing your relationship with food, you're working on changing your relationship with exercise, working on changing, something as simple as like doing laundry like washing it and putting it away in the same day. Like, I know as adults, we all struggle with this, and I wish that this was not a secret. Like, it almost feels like, you know, some people live a great life where like they can do a basket of laundry every day, wash it and put it away in that day. And like, that's great. I'm happy for you. Right now, that's not my current situation. So like, I do have to take a day when I go to do laundry, and I do have to take that same day to put it away. And like, it does make me crazy. So if you are trying to change that relationship with laundry, you know, I guarantee you that if you say, yeah, I like to get it done. I like to get it all done in the same day. I love getting my laundry washed, folded, and put away in the same day. Just that sentence I just said right there, if you repeated it to yourself for like a minute every day, just a minute. I mean, a minute is like going to the bathroom and washing your hands. Like, it's really not a long time. If you took something as small as that and put it into your mind, think about what you could accomplish. Think about what you could do. Think about what you could change in your life. I want to give you guys an example of how this has worked for me. And it's going to sound kind of silly. A couple years ago, I went on a camping trip, and there was like a thing where everyone jumped off this cliff. And if you know anything about me, I am afraid of heights, and I am not yet a strong swimmer. I had a life jacket on, but I was like petrified. And I'm watching this. I stood there for 2 hours watching literal children, like half of my size, and I'm not that big, jumping into this water. It was like a 12-foot cliff, and they were jumping into the water, coming up to climb again, and doing it. And I was so scared. I was so scared. I don't think I've ever been that scared in my life. And I've been in a car accident. Like, I've been in some shady situations. And I was so scared. I was so scared. And the last 20, 25 minutes of me standing at the top of that cliff, I looked like a crazy person, and I was like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And I kid you not, I have a video of me finally jumping off that cliff, and ever since I did that, I literally believe that I can do so much by just literally telling myself that I can. And I want to leave you guys with like a little template on how to get started. I'm going to kind of give you some of the things that I say to myself. But in addition to, I want you to write some things out for yourself so that you too can make, if even the smallest, of a change. I am smart. I am strong. I can do anything I put my mind to. All good things in abundance happen to me. I can control only myself, no one else. Watch what you say. Thank you for listening. Come back next week for another episode of You the Boss podcast.